Hello, Adam.
Um,
How are you doing?
I'm very well, Pavleen, and a very good morning from London. I know it's a little bit later in the day, but I'm absolutely delighted and honored to be speaking here today at the Exotic Wedding Planning Conference. It's a great pleasure. So I should just map out what I plan to do in the next half an hour. There are sort of four topics I'm going to speak about, and that is producing an event with a larger than life experience. You'll have heard Pavleen mention that I used to be an actor, and very much that is the approach that I bring to all the planning of the events, parties, and particularly weddings that I put together. I'm going to illustrate that for you. I've got lots of pictures, lots of video to show you as we go along. So you've got some background to who I am. I used to be an actor, and the actor approach has a very good one for telling stories. Telling stories is something that I really believe in, and I look at when I sit down for the first time with a bride and a groom and the family and ask the question, why? Why? Obviously, they want to get married, but what is it? Why do we want to choose what the things that we're going to choose? Why that particular venue? Why that caterer? Why that entertainment? One of the things I would say to you very strongly is it's really important to keep asking that question why at the beginning. So we get really honed down what the story is, what the story we want to tell the guests and for the bride and groom to experience. So I'm all about stories. And of course, stories is something that actors do very well, is telling stories. And I suppose I often look at events as a 3-act play. Sometimes it's a 5-act play. And there are different process. We might have the rehearsal dinner, we have the wedding, we have the wedding breakfast. And all of those have their own drama and their own rhythm. And what I'm trying to do is bring the perspective of the performer, of the director of theatre and experience to what I do. And I suppose one of those things that's really important is knowing how to engage your guests so that they actually feel something. And when they feel something, they remember it. So that's a little bit of background about why the theatre and my approach. So we're going to talk about producing an event with a larger than life experience, just like going to the theatre. We're going to talk about costs, maximizing profits and optimizing the experience. We're also this is something that has come into even sharper relief, and certainly in the UK, is since COVID and lockdown, is socially and environmentally sustainable events. Our impact on the planet and what we do and the way that we behave, the way that we operate, the way that we work is so important now. We have to take responsibility for the impact that our events make and try to do that in the most sustainable way possible. And finally, I'm going to use a case study to talk about how I approach producing an event with a larger than life experience. That exact event itself. So storytelling in the luxury wedding. This is a luxury wedding that we put on and staged. So I'm going to take you through that. And finally, there are going to be some questions. So quite a lot to talk about, and I really look forward to hearing your input. I hope that you'll have questions. It's always really interesting to hear from the guests. So it's very frustrating to be sitting here and not to be sitting in the same room with you. I wish I was there with you all, and that we could see each other. But anyway, I'm imagining it. So Private Drama, my company, what do we do? Well, I believe that every party or wedding in particular has a message, and my responsibility is to make that story heard so that it lands, so that whatever that story is, and we're talking here about luxury weddings, about weddings that make emotional engagement, make sure that that narrative gets completely heard at every touch point of that wedding. And that goes from the very first material that guests touch. And that might be an invitation, an electronic invitation. It goes through to when they're checking into the hotel. It goes through to what they see, the first thing they see, the first thing that they smell, the first thing that they touch. So that's that story element. And I believe very strongly that stories make the world go round. It's how we communicate ideas. It's how we spread messages, how we come together. It goes back to something very primal of sitting, caveman sitting in a cave, and their entertainment and their sense of myth and legend was about sitting around and sharing experiences and sharing narratives. And that's something that really informs the way that I approach my work. So we want to make sure that our bride and groom stories are heard and understood. We've now got 20 years experience of working probably alongside some of the biggest brands, high net worth individuals, and we've staged many international weddings, and I know how to make them land with impact and power. So I hope what I'm sharing with you today will help you when you're planning your events and your weddings. I think one of the key things is collaboration, is working really closely with our clients, because only by collaborating and communicating clearly can we understand what the messages are that want to be communicated and how we want that translated into the live experience. So I will spend a lot of time talking with the two families involved in the wedding, hearing what the important things are to them, and coming back to this, asking the question why, because the more I understand about what the dream is, what the narrative is, the better I can help support that, so that the entire process is informed by that really, really detailed research. And I think I also at that point will be selective about, is this the right, am I the right client? Am I the right person for this client? If I start to feel that I'm not going to be able to add to the narrative, if I feel that I'm not going to bring anything to the party, or sometimes, you know, it can happen that you just don't form a relationship with that client. It doesn't quite work, and actually at that time it's probably better to say, look, I don't think I'm the right person for you, but hopefully that doesn't happen, and I would say 99% of the time it's a wonderful time getting to know the families. So let's just come on now to producing a larger than life experience, and I want to use a case study of something that I worked on that isn't a wedding, but is more like a party. But actually, before that I do that, I've done quite a bit of talking. I'd like to just show you a little bit of an example of the kind of work that I'm involved in. This is a very short show reel, so I'm just going to pull that up, hopefully. Just looking at the screen is always marvelous when you try to get to share your screen and you're looking around to share it and don't quite find it, but don't worry, I will get back to it. Okay, not quite coming up, this one, so I'm just going to pass on that for the moment and just come back to talking. So let's talk about now this case study of something that I have been working on, which is to create a never to be forgotten experience, just like our weddings, where the guests would be at the center of the experience. And this is for the company Belmond, who are owned by Louis Vuitton, Moet Hennessy, and want to have the party of a lifetime, really to welcome back everyone coming out of COVID. And this party will start at the Cipriani in Venice with like a 1920s speakeasy, where guests will start to be immersed in that world, and will continue onto the Orient Express the following morning, and party through the night until they reach Paris the following morning. So I'm going to just show you now a film of how I sold that idea to that client. And I'm just going to check I've optimized the sound, because that's quite important as well. Yes, it has. Going to press that. Good. You should all be seeing Wild Tonic, a journey into the roaring 20s. So here we go. Have a look at this. So a little flavor of what is to come for those guests. Now, the approach here, and you'll see that there's very much you can see the actor coming through here in terms of the way that I told that narrative and brought all of that to life. Was through film clips and also footage from the Orient Express. But the point of this party was to put the guests right at the center of the experience, rather than thinking around what does this look like. I wanted to put the guests right in the center so that they would feel something. So all along the journey, there are all sorts of different things that will be happening, be they on the station platform, be they in carriages, be they in pop-up bits of music. So in terms of really getting that larger than life experience, you can see that we've created this huge canvas onto which the guests are going to be participating and will feel bigger than the event itself. So that's very much a tool we now use in terms of planning our events. Is we quite often will borrow from the film world and create a narrative that will tell that journey. Another thing that I just wanted to give you a little bit of some insight into was a party I planned in the Hamptons in New York, where the client had dreamt of running away to the circus. That was her dream. She didn't end up doing that, but that was the fantasy. That was the dream. And so she wanted to make that happen for her for one night only, for a very special party. And so I put together a whole mood board of ideas of how that could happen, and then took and put together a big company of circus performers, created an incredible stage on which they could perform, and then surrounded the guests with that experience so that they were dropped literally into the middle of this world. And that's one of the things I really like doing in terms of the events that we plan, and I suppose particularly weddings, because they are so personal, is to create a world into which we can take the guests and take the bridegroom and everyone who's there just to another place in another world, a world that is never going to be forgotten. So I'm just going to show you a little bit of this film, which is some of the highlights of that particular day or evening in the Hamptons. So I'm just going to share my screen with you, and here we go.
vieni via di qui. Niente più ti lega a questi luoghi, neanche questi fiori azzurri. Via, via, neanche questo tempo grigio, pieno di musica e di uomini che ti sono piaciuti. It's wonderful, it's wonderful, it's wonderful. Good luck, my baby, it's wonderful, it's wonderful, it's wonderful. I dream of you. That's wonderful, that's wonderful, that's wonderful. Good luck, my baby, it's wonderful, it's wonderful, that's wonderful. I dream of you. Cheers, cheers, cheers. Do 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 do, chi-boom, chi-boom, boom. Do 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 do, chi-boom, chi-boom, boom. Do 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 do.
So you just get a little bit of insight into that world that we created for the guests that particular evening. So now I just want to come on to really this about costs and profit and how to optimize that experience. And I'm conscious of time, so I'm just going to press on here. For me, costing is all about relationship with suppliers and ensuring that you have good relationships and having that ability to be able to negotiate with our suppliers so that we are getting best value for money and that we can demonstrate to to the client. And one of the ways that we try private drama to ensure that the client really feels they have good value is to have totally transparent accounting. They can see everything that we're doing. And I think this is really important when we are justifying fees, is we can look at the entire budget and we say, well, that is our bit, that is where we are making our money and where we think we're adding real value. And I suppose that comes quite neatly onto maximizing profits. Is we stand by our fees. We work on a percentage basis on the final bill, and we absolutely, certainly, and I'm sure all of you will agree with this, feel we earn our commission. We go above and beyond, and I suppose that absolutely means that when it comes to the experience, I know from the feedback that we get. So I stand by our costs, but we always believe we're fair. We're not the cheapest. We're certainly not the most expensive, but we absolutely stand behind our costings. I wanted to talk just a little bit about sustainability and the impact the UK events industry has. I think one of the important things to remember is that in total, the UK events industry emits something like 1.2 billion kilograms of CO2 every year. And that uses an estimated 380 million litres of diesel, which costs around 230 million. So that diesel use contributes about 1.2 kilograms of CO2 emissions annually, and that's nearly 1.5 of the total UK diesel use. So that's approximately the same as the country of Malta. So we feel there has to be a journey towards net zero. We have to take responsibility for that. And the way that we're doing that is in three ways. First of all, our engagement with our suppliers. So we prioritize low carbon alternatives for things like transport, for waste, for energy. We have a responsible procurement policy, which is working in partnership with key suppliers to encourage best practice in minimizing environmental impacts and inspiring ideas to decarbonize their own emissions. We use a lot of local suppliers. We try wherever we can to use so that we're not using big supply chains to get our materials, be they catering or be they production, to where they are. Waste management of the events industry has historically been very wasteful. So we really try to make sure that 100% of everything that we build and put together is recyclable. And we have a number of ways that we do that, certainly in the UK. Make sure that, you know, at every touch point, again, that we don't use any single-use plastic. We give all of our crew, all of our staff water bottles so that they can reuse that. And we have, in terms of delivering sustainable events, we have a sustainable event management system using ISO 20121 for sustainable events, and that enables us to manage our events with practical actions that can help clients and reduce the environmental impacts. We also have made a commitment to measuring CO2 emissions for future events. So we are really on top of this, and I think it's a very important thing that we need to put at the front of our agendas. I'm going to finally, before we get to questions, come on to one case study of an event I did in the south of France. So I'm just going to share my screen again with you. If you just give me a second, just show you how we applied. I'm going to rattle through this, but how we applied that creative storytelling thinking to an event. So this event took place at the Eden Rock Hotel in the south of France. If any of you know it, it's the most amazing hotel that sits at the top of this beautiful runway leading down to the beach. Is where all the film stars used to go, and where many parties happened during Cannes. And you've got this beautiful drive, which is where we wanted to, for the rehearsal dinner, create a sort of Midsummer Night's Dream feel. Both the bride and groom loved, they were from New York, loved theatre and loved Midsummer Night's Dream. And so the idea was to bring the forest around them and take them into this magical environment where they would have dinner and be transported, not only being in the south of France, but be transported to this incredible place. And so that's what this looked like. You can see how we brought the forest out of the forest and onto this pathway here. But we also then wanted to bring that alive with entertainment, and Midsummer Night's Dream features. And so we thought a series of fairies who would interact with the guests and make them feel really special, that they've been transported to some amazing place outside of New York and outside of France, that they were suddenly becoming immersed into this world. And these pictures that I'm showing you are costume designs and the costumes that created this magical effect within this party, the rehearsal the night before. This was a couple that loved theatre, and you can see how that's been translated into these amazing costume designs for these performers, dancers, and acrobats who interacted with the guests. The following day, for the actual ceremony, also I've missed a little bit, which is we also have performers like fairies appear in the trees, so that suddenly when a guest looked round, they would see someone appearing magically out of the forest. It was a really incredible effect. And then for the following day, we had this incredible runway, which was lined with music. They loved classical music. And we lined this walkway down for the wedding with musicians who played some of the bride and groom's favorite music. And finally, in the evening for the wedding breakfast, their favorite sort of style was black and white. So we had this kind of black and white world that they came into, and was peopled again by lots of performers, all who were styled in this extraordinary manner. I could go on for longer, but I'm not going to, because I know there are going to be questions. So I'm going to now open the floor for questions, and I'm really in your hands.
Thank you so much, Adam, for that lovely presentation. I have to say that all the videos had such a Hollywood feel to it. They were so inviting. I wish I could be at any one of these parties. They look like a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Yeah, they were extraordinary to work on.
I'm sure they looked it. Okay, so now we open the floor for some questions for Adam. And we already have some questions in store. So Adam, the first question is, how do you think the storytelling process has changed with COVID?
I suppose the biggest difference is an anxiety around socializing. And so that informs what we can do and how we can tell that story. In the UK, we began with smaller gatherings. Fortunately, now we are now freed up, and we are planning larger scale events. I think also that the other thing is that COVID has meant, because of what COVID has done in terms of locking us down, everyone is wanting to open up. They want joy, they want pleasure. And I think that's very much informing the inquiries that I'm dealing with.
That's very right of you. I think we have to change with the changing surroundings. That's so true. The next question is, are events post-pandemic more sustainable, or has there been a change?
I think the pandemic has, as I was saying, brought sustainability into a much sharper relief. So that I think people are looking much harder at the impact that making on their planet. There's been more of a period of reflection. I think millennials are very much tasked with thinking about their impact that they're making, and certainly as an industry, we have to take on that responsibility as well.
Very true. I think it's a very important topic to deal with. The next question is, Adam, for businesses to sustain, do we need to bring down our pricing, or does your principle of fair pricing still apply?
No, I think we have to sustain our fair pricing. I think that it is all too easy for where I would be suspicious is if a client said, well, you haven't been doing anything for ages, you must be desperate to get back to work. Well, yes, we are very keen to get back to work, but we're not so desperate that we're going to cut our prices. In order to deliver events that are memorable, that are sustainable, and that have high impact, we believe we have a fair policy in charging, and we stand by our pricing.
Great. Thank you so much, Adam, for such a lovely presentation and the way you answered the questions also. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to have you here.
Yeah, great pleasure. Thank you all so much.